One way we should start thinking about working with polyhedrons, or even just working with sculpture, is that there is a difference between 2 dimensions and 3 dimensions. When we look at a 2-dimensional object, or something that's 2-dimensional, it's normally flat. It's like a piece of paper with a drawing or a painting on it. And we call it 2-dimensional because those dimensions are height and width. So this is actually an illustration or a plan for a cube. A cube exists in 3 dimensions. If you can see this, it's actually a 3-dimensional object, and we call it 3-dimensionals. I'm going to prop it up here so that you can see it a little bit better. It is a 3-dimensional object, has height and width, but it also has depth. So when we talk about depth, it's how deep is something, how far does it occupy in our space. Obviously, technically, a piece of paper is 3-dimensional because it has a thickness here. But for our purposes, the image is very flat, and so it doesn't have a thickness. So that's 2-dimensional. This is 3-dimensional. We'll end up working through those in a variety of ways. One of the things we're going to be doing then is we're going to be trying to figure out how we can take 2-dimensional paper, or in this case, tag board, changing it into 3 dimensions. I'm going to show you a couple of ways. First, I'm going to cut it. We're probably going to end up using knives of a variety in our class, and I could cut it with scissors also, but I wanted to start with something like this so you could see how this might work. This is called a utility knife. It has a single sharp edge, and normally these they're adjustable. If our blade is not quite sharp enough, we can snap the tip off. I'm just going to take a little tiny bit of this off, and I'm actually using this cutting board. If you notice, I have this soft surface, and I put that on my table. Whenever I'm going to be cutting, I like to have a protection for the table because we don't want to leave scratches on the table. I have to teach a drawing class in here, and that would be bad. So some of the things I'm going to do, I'm just going to take, 1, 2, 3 inches off. Okay. I'm going to hold it down here, and notice that I'm letting my fingertips turn white because I don't want this to move as I'm running this knife on it. Also, you'll notice that I don't have the blade out really far because that leaves a lot that can cut me. So when I bring it back, I don't have very much exposed. I'm putting it against the ruler, and you don't actually have to, if you got a good blade, you don't have to push too hard. This is, I think, a 3-ply board, which means that it's very thick and hard. So what I just did was I wanted to save this piece, and so I laid the ruler on it and cut on this side. This side then, what if we called that the waist piece? I'm not going to throw it away, but this is not the part we're using, so I cut near the waist side. So if my knife started to track out here and I got lost and it just went out here, I haven't ruined my work. I haven't ruined the work piece. I only damaged the waist piece. Imagine that. So now I have this. It's still a 2-dimensional sheet, isn't it? A couple of ways that we can cause these 2-dimensional sheets to be 3-dimensional is we can roll them up. And if I were to glue that there, then we have a good 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional object now. We could just try to fold it, and if you go like this, you might be able to see that's not a bad fold, but I want to show you on our process the way that we can create really nice folds. I'm going to notice the way I'm using the measurements on my cutting board if I lay this directly against that, every one of these marks as a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to go to a full inch right here. Now, if I press really hard with something, I'm going to use scissors, but I'm only going to use, see this nice dull corner right here? So I'm not even going to open the scissors. I'm just going to put that nice dull corner there. And I'm going to drag it along this. Now I am putting pressure on it here. And so it did dent into it. Now watch how easily this folds. Don't make a liar out of me. Oh, jeez. Oh, see how that folded perfectly on a straight line? Now, if that looks like it was accidental, I'll do one that is without even marking it. If I put the soft edge of the scissors on there and I press hard, I hope there you can see the score. So this is called scoring the paper. And now when I fold it, it creates a very nice fold. So I'm working on one side of this and I'm folding away from that. We might want to do this. One thing to think about, this paper has 2 sides. One is shiny. It would be great if I could show you a shiny side. One is dull. I need a brighter light to demonstrate that. Here's the dull side. There's the shiny side. I'm hoping you can see a little bit of the reflected light playing on it. We're going to draw on these later, so we're probably going to want to have the shiny side to the inside. Therefore, if I have any drawing that I need to do on this, I'm going to try to do it on the shiny side so that I can hide that later. Any drawing, if I have to do it on the other side, I'll probably try to keep it lighter because I don't want it to interfere with my design later on. And if I can keep it really light, if it is on the other side, I can hopefully erase it before I do my drawing on there or painting. All right, once again, bam. I score, and then I can fold right along that score. So now, I think with those scores in there, we can do a number of things. I could do an accordion fold. I can go in opposite directions. And so now I've created 3-dimensional movement with a 2-dimensional page. I don't know if I should show you this. I'm going to show you something. It's kind of cool. Scoring is such an awesome process. We can even create curved scores. And we might try this a little bit later when we're doing more complex paper sculptures. You might be able to use this, but I'm going to attempt to do a curved score. I'm using a lot of pressure. So you can see, I hope there it was, that I did a score on this. And now if I carefully start see how that's making a nice curved fold. Who knew that you could have a curved fold first off, but that it could be just so darned beautiful. I'm going to shape it a little bit, and then I'm going to keep it around. It'll be an artifact from today's scoring. Oh boy. We're going to be working with polyhedrons. A cube is a polyhedron. It is a 6-sided, we call it a Platonic solid. And I think the Platonic solids, they all have equal parts on each side. Each one of these squares is equal to the other. So you notice we have as we would on a square, 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, but then we also have a top, 5, and a bottom, 6. So this is a 6-sided object. Another object you'll have an opportunity to make will be an octahedron. This one has some drawings on it. But notice that an octahedron, I bet you can guess how many sides that is. Octa being 8. I have this cool shape. And I believe this is called a dodecahedron. So a dodecahedron has 20 sides. You can easily see that we have 5 sides here. If we flipped it over, there'd be 5 sides on the other side, and then there is 10 going. I may demonstrate a couple of these. I'm going to start with the very simple one, the simplest one of all, a tetrahedron. So this is a very simple pattern for a tetrahedron. There could be, there is another one that I like also. But one of the reasons we work from patterns, instead of just cutting out separate triangles and put them all together, the problem with that is that, first off, you have to figure out a way to hook these together and see how that's going to involve a little bit of engineering. If we can hook them together with a score and a fold, those parts are already together. So one of the reasons we use a pattern is we're looking for the way to engineer this so it's going to be as strong as possible. And the strongest way to keep a single sheet together is to simply fold it rather than trying to bring 2 pieces together. Another thing you'll notice is these tabs. So the tabs are, after we fold this thing together, the tabs will be the part that's left over, which will glue onto the one next to it. And that way we can keep all of our, all of our gluing on the inside. And it's going to give it a much cleaner appearance. All right, I'm going to grab that piece of tag board again. And this is a 3-ply, so it's pretty heavy. We can do this on regular paper, and we can do it on regular tag board or cardstock. But, oh, lordy, lordy. But the deal is, might be able to do it this way. If I can put it onto a heavy-duty stock, I think it'll last longer. I'm going to attempt to use one of these as a pattern, and I'm going to draw it onto this, and then I'll cut it out. So here's the first thing I'm going to do. Since I can see that there is a straight line right here, and a straight line right here, that I have two triangles going together in straight lines, I'm going to start with a straight line down here. I could go directly to the edge of the page, but I want to make sure that I maintain that tab. So I'm going to come just a little bit up, and now I'll draw my first straight line. Maybe I'll go right to the edge of the ruler just to make sure that I have everything straight on this page. Now I have the shiny side up, and I'm drawing very lightly. You can probably barely see that. I'm doing that just in case. That's a bad idea for video. So I'm going to make a much darker line so you can see that. All right, I'll apply more pressure. Bang. There, I think you can see that better. I could be using a pen also. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide what size I want this to be. I think that in this direction I'll have to use this one. Since this is almost the farthest part out, I'm going to come almost all the way out and lay this triangle pattern onto my sheet, trying to set it directly onto my line. Now we've made these triangles out of tag board so that they're a little bit thicker, but they might not take too much abuse, so let's be careful. I did once. I'm going to go ahead and do another one right here, because when I do that, then you'll see that I'm actually creating two sides of this one. So I'm going to draw this one. Now, if I'm accurate, I should be able to draw a line right across here. And I'm going to make sure, just for the sake of accuracy, oh look, that's about 4.5 right there, isn't it? And 4.5 right there. I think I'm going to be good. Putting my line all the way across this. Oh, haran. By the way, you might notice that I am using steel rulers today. I could be drawing my lines with plastic rulers, but if I'm going to get the knife out and start cutting, I want to have a steel ruler to go against. So that is the reason I'm doing that. So notice we already have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 of our triangles. I only have to put one more on there. And so I can do that by see, I'm not sure why this always goes weird for me, but bam. There we go. I have all 4 of my triangles, and now we're going to need, it looks like 1, 2, 3 tabs. The only thing to remember about tabs, they could be shaped like anything. I tend to freehand them because when we fold them under, they're going to be invisible. The only part I have to worry about is to make sure that this is going to be cut at an appropriate angle so that it doesn't interfere with the rest of it. This might be a little bit too large. Oh, you know what I think that shape is? It's probably just less than this, isn't it? Okay. Yeah, good. So, good deal. I'm going to cut this out really fast, and then we're going to score it, and wait till you see this. So like I say, we wouldn't want to use a plastic ruler because when we put a steel knife against it, it can cut into the ruler, and then we won't be able to draw straight lines or even cut straight lines. If you decide to use a wooden ruler, make sure that it's one that has a steel edge on it. But even this one feels a little bumpy. We don't have to be too awfully accurate. But so here's what I'm doing. You might notice I'm already kind of breaking a rule. I'm going to do an approximate cut here so I'll have an easier time maneuvering it. Always be conscious of your classmates when you're doing this. And remember, it doesn't take very much pressure. But what I'm saying is I don't want us struggling to cut and then losing control. All right. I had suggested to you that we should cut towards the waist side. I know that I am throwing this part away, so I'm going to cut here along this line. Oh, see that? I did go into the waist part. Ooh, good thing I did that. So the blade, it can sometimes get a hold of an edge, or it'll just start, especially on this thick paper, it'll go all the way through. Whew. So that was a good thing that I had decided to go to the waist side. That was completely unintentional, but it was a good learning opportunity. Yay us. All right, on this one, I'm just going to, I can freehand it on the tabs, remember? And now I'm going to cut this one. The ruler is protecting the part that I'm going to use, the business side of this polyhedron. And by the way, this particular polyhedron is called a tetrahedron. Oh, it's a 4-sided solid. And I'm going to tell you right now that it is the strongest 3-dimensional shape in the universe. I will tell you that with great confidence, even though I don't know if that's true. It's a very strong shape because, as we'll see in a moment, a structure like this, each side supports the other ones. All right. Once again, my ruler is protecting the business side, the side that's going to be my art, or my polyhedron, and I'm cutting on the side, the waist side. Remember that this particular part, the outsides of these tabs, can be quite random. You know, I can continue with a random tab here. Is that going to be a tab? Yes. And I say random because, well, you'll see in a moment. Ba-bam. Cool jewels. There's our completed pattern. Now, what are we going to do? We are going to score. So when we score these, we're going to put a good bend into each one of these lines that we drew. Not, of course, that one, but this one. Each one of the straight lines will have a score. All right. I'm going to press hard and pull across it. And ba-bang, we can see the score. Oh, come on, bend. Now you can sometimes score with a knife. And there are certain materials you need to do that. But you on this 3-ply tag board, what that means is that it has 3 layers of paper glued to each other. And what happens when I cut it or score it with a knife is that the edges start to come apart. Ha-ha. We only have a few scores left. And of course there is no waste side now, so I just have to be very careful. Now, depending upon the thickness of your paper, you can sometimes use something like a knife, or a pen, or even you can score with a pencil. Anything that's going to put a little pressure onto it. All right, 2 more scores, 3 more on the tabs. So I'm gonna last score. So normally things seem to fold a little bit easier away from the score, but remember that we want to have the shiny side to the inside. So basically once I bend it that way, I use the scores to bend it inwards, it'll bend more easily in the direction that we actually prefer. All right, buckaroos, get ready to be amazed. As I bend this forward, I will be able to glue this inside. And as I bend this one forward, I'll glue each of these inside. And bing, bada, boom, we have just created a tetrahedron. Now I think that what we're going to do in this process is before we glue it, for some of us, we're going to decide to decorate it. We might bend it repeatedly so that we know what parts match each other so that we can draw some guidelines and create some neat designs. As you see on some of these, we have certain designs. Some people chose to draw a different design on each edge. And some people chose to relate the edges in some way. Like this one has very similar shapes on each one, but you see how one edge reacts with the next. We even have some parts coming over an edge. I think that's cool, that there's some continuity, or there is a repetition, which is a good thing for a design. See how this one goes across 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 5 edges with this same design. So there are a couple of different ways to do it. I have the shiny side to the middle now. And of course, if I really want it to sit nice, I can still come in here. Sometimes I'll burnish a side down. I'll use the soft plastic like this maybe. There, now I got a really nice fold there. If I go and do each one of these like that, the burnisher will cause them to be nice and pronounced. I can also, of course, hit it with my fingernail, burnish it with that. Okay, once again, the big concepts. 2-dimensional paper. Our particular paper has a shiny side and a matte side. I have done my drawings and my work on the shiny side because I want to hide that, because it won't take the matte marks as well. So we can have the matte side out. Ba-ba-bing. I just converted a 2-dimensional sheet of paper two-dimensional with height and width into a three-dimensional object that has height and width, but it also has depth.